Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, your child librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at the final book, so to speak, of the Circle of Magic quartet. There are two. Now, I misspoke in previous videos saying that I wasn't going to do the Will of the Empress till later, but I looked at my schedule and was like, no, I have it scheduled for here in November. So we're going to do this. The other thing I kind of screwed up on when re-looking at this book is the characters in the Circle Opens are 14. So they're not 16 quite yet. They're 16 in this book. So, and that was kind of my mistake. But again, they were growing up. Because in the original Circle of Magic quartet, they were around 10 or 11. So now they were 14. Now they're 16. And they're essentially they're basically considered almost adults at this point. And again, this is set in a fictional world, but again, it's late Middle Ages. So yeah, they would technically be considered adults at this time. So what's going on in this book is essentially all four of them have come home. Daja Sandry is having issues with, she has both her parents after they died. She inherited a bunch of land and estates in the country of Norman to the north. I am pronouncing this country correctly. I'll pull up the map in front here. Yeah, it's Norman. Nerlin. Mispronouncing things. Yeah, Nermorn. Yeah, it's Namorn. Whatever. I'm not good at pronouncing things even in my own head. But since her mother's death and she was too young, they've been being managed by her distant cousin Empress. And the start of this book, it's like she has to start managing these lands because they're hers. And her uncle almost is like, you probably need to pay attention because you've inherited a bunch of this stuff. And these are your lands, these are your people. And essentially, we've been allowing you to not pay attention to this because you've been too young. And now you're an adult, you really do need to pay attention to this. And yes, you know how to do it because you do it for me. So she's essentially being not necessarily told off, but her great uncle's essentially reminding her, you're an adult. You have responsibilities now. We've managed this for you, but now you've come of age and you need to pay attention. And this is kind of what's happening to her friends as well. Daja and Frostbite come home, and Frostbite has to explain to Daja that she can't, unless she decides to become, basically take vows and become part of the temple, she has to basically make her own living. And apparently Sandry never told her this, and they kind of get in a little bit of a tiff on this, because these two were close. Briar comes home, so Daja and Briar both are able to make money of their own. Briar does his bonsai trees, and then Daja does her living metal creations, not to mention she's a smith. And then there's Tris. Tris is a weather mage. She can't really do anything practical. So Briar and Daja buy a house together, and then Tris comes home, and she essentially takes over running their household for them because she has nothing to do. And Nicolo's gone. He's off. I think he's still trying to write a book. She's dropped off the little girl she has from her previous from Shattered Glass off at Winding Circle Temples. Briar's dropped Evie's with Rosethorn again at Discipline at the temple because they're young. So, and of course, Pasco's not brought up at all in this book, which is kind of funny. I'm assuming he's been taken over by the dance school because at the end of his book, he goes to the dance school. And then, obviously, Daja's students stay home with their parents. So that's kind of how the book begins, is you have the three friends who are now living together as adults in their own home, and Sandry's still living with her uncle. And they've closed each other off. So they're not talking mind to mind anymore. And because they've become adults and they're just kind of closing themselves off. Now, technically, Sandry can force it, but she told them she never would. She does actually at the end of this book, but it's an emergency, a major emergency. So the point of this book is essentially the Empress of Norman, who is a distant relation to Sandry, wants her to come home. And something I didn't really mention that much in Daja's book is in this country of Norman, girls can be kidnapped and forced into marriage. And that's pretty common. And according to the Empress, it's if they're not weak enough to escape, because apparently she escaped a couple of times, it doesn't matter. So that's her mind. She doesn't want it. Despite being a female ruler, she still allows her, basically the women of her country, to be at risk of being kidnapped and raped and forced into marriages that they do not want, that their family may not want, but they do not have a choice. If they cannot escape, then they're stuck. And a lot of them apparently commit suicide because of this. And the only other way they can escape is if they can get off their husband's land and get to essentially their liege lord, someone like Sandry, if she were there, and they can essentially protect them. And that's also what happens at the, where in the Empress's capital, is she'll take in women, and they're supposed to be safe within her home. She takes in a lot of young women to basically protect them. And that's important to the story. So basically, the Empress, what is her name? I cannot pronounce it. It starts with a B, and I will look it up here. It's on the, let's see. It's Brienne, or Brian, mispronouncing it, but she's pretty much been pressuring the Duke of Emmeline, Sandry's uncle, to force her to come north. And because she wants her, she knows how powerful she is, and she wants her as a jewel of her court, essentially. She's a collector of powerful mages, and she likes to show off, and she has eyes on conquering things. So she's also very selfish. She's the type of ruler who forces her courtiers to get in favor of her, and they periodically go in and out of favor, and she has various lovers. She does have a daughter you never see. The daughter is hidden off somewhere under heavy protection, and they never mention a husband. Like, I don't think any in the book whatsoever mentioned where the heck her daughter came from. Obviously, what happened to the father? It's very possible, knowing this woman, she had him killed. But nonetheless, so she is pressuring through trade issues to get the Duke of Emmeline to send Sandry north. Now, he doesn't trust her. He loves his niece. He knows what this woman wants, and he wants basically to protect Sandry, but he cannot send essentially soldiers to protect her because that would look bad. So he actually himself goes to where Briar, Daja, and Tris are living, and basically asks them, it's like, this is what's going on. I don't trust her. Sandry is going north. I want you three to go with her because I know you can protect her. And I know she'll listen to you because you're her closest friends. And he knows how powerful they are. Mind you, so does the Empress. And she might have been thinking, like, oh, they might come too. And again, they're some of the most powerful young mages around. And she wants to use them. So they are slightly cautious. They travel with a group of traders north to first Sandry's estates, her family estates, where they meet up with her cousin. She likes him. He's a very, very nice guy. He has a wife. I think they have children. In fact, I think they have daughters that they're very, very protective of because, again, they could be easily kidnapped. And then she goes to court. And this is a typical fancy court where there's a lot of people stocking up. There's quite a few men around. She intentionally puts Sandry and her friends with people their own age. Mind you, the Empress is sleeping with them. Now, most of the men here, these young men, are aware that Sandry comes with a lot of money, a lot of land. So if their estates are not as wealthy as they would like it, they know that marrying her would take, not only would they have complete control of her estate and basically heirs, and they know how powerful she is magic-wise, and mage wives are actually attractive in this country. If you, as you read in Cold Fire, with Daja's previous book, where they talk a lot about this. So it's very important you read those 8 books prior to reading this, otherwise it will not make sense. This is the conclusion almost of their story to an extent. So they're there. Daja actually has starts having a love affair with one of the women, a young noble woman who's in charge of the Empress's wardrobe. So yes, they have a lesbian love affair. That is in this book. Briar takes up with one of the other young women in court. They start having an affair. No, it doesn't go into detail. It's primarily just kissing, and then with Daja, it's an actual relationship. And they talk. And yes, they kiss. But that's pretty much as far as it goes. Again, it doesn't... Tamora Pierce does not really go into detail. Even in her Tortall series, she doesn't... They know people have sex, but she does not go into detail about it at all, because that's not the target demographic of these books. It's mentioned. And again, it's also mentioned that the Empress is having affairs. She also has 2 mages at her side that are academic mages that are very, very powerful. And so she still wants these 4 friends. And she's also aware they're not speaking inside their head. They're not speaking telepathically with each other anymore, because she has spies everywhere. And she's been watching them. So what ends up happening, you see a lot of the court goings on. Sandry slowly falls in love to an extent to a young man by the name of Pershon, who kisses up to her and acts very gentle and very interested. And her friends, I don't think they fully catch on. They're very much aware. They do not like the way this is. They've talked to the queen. They've talked to the Empress. And she's like, if these women are not strong enough, then they deserve what they get. And obviously they don't like it. Sandry has no intention of staying. And her friends are kind of like, then you need to kind of give up your lands kind of thing. It's like, you don't need to be this rich. This comes into play later. But there's going to be a ball. And Pershon comes to escort her. And this is near the end of the book. He kidnaps her. And this was always planned. I think he knocks her out, which is one sort of drugs, and locks her in a box that has been spelled by his uncle to basically resist her magic. So anytime she tries to use her thread magic or anything, everything unravels. So she's stuck in a box. Now remember, back in the first book in the series, Sandry, at like 10, 11 years old, was locked in a closet for a while. She's claustrophobic, heavily claustrophobic. She falls apart, but then she goes out to force basically connection on her friends. She can't get it. Daja's too blocked off. Tris is spiky. She forces it on Briar, and he's kind of basically he's making out with one of the other girls, and essentially all she does is she grabs him and shows him where she's at. It's like, what the heck? One, you promised never to do this, and why are you in a box that's covered in magic? She's like, I've been bloody damn kidnapped, and then locked up. Come find me and get me the heck out of here. Which he does. He contacts Tris, and basically he follows their magic to where Sandry's at. She's in a room below the palace, near basically an exit by the ocean, by the water. In fact, I think what it is, it shows it here. Yeah, it's the Sith, which is almost looks like an inland sea. So Briar comes, he contacts his Tris, who's playing with lightning, and he kind of shows her what's going on, and she's royally pissed. So she shows up, covered in crawling in lightning, which normally she doesn't. She has full control, but again, she's royally pissed off because somebody's kidnapped her friend and locked her in a box, ready to be shipped off. So they go down there, and there's guards guarding it. They force these guys to tell them. She puts collars of lightning around their necks, because again, she's very powerful and very pissed off, and forces them to tell them that their master was going to come with a ship and get her, and he has a house basically spelled to basically prevent Sandry from escaping. So, and they know that they're not talking mentally right now, so that's how he believes he can keep her, and he's going to force her to marry him, and he's going to take over her lands, and then he's going to continue, basically the moment he gets her pregnant, he's going to go back to dealing with the queen, dealing with the Empress. Not care, he does not, he's pretty much smooth master, and he's convinced that she'll let him, because he'll talk to her about true love and stuff like that. And then I think, so they release Sandry. Sandry is now pissed off. She's out of a box. Her magic is back in full force. And again, she's absolutely 100% livid. Because again, who wouldn't be? You lock someone who, one, is claustrophobic and two, a powerful mage in a box to be shipped off. And that is the common thing in this country. So she's not happy at all. So they Tris, basically she gets these guards almost outside this cave-like room, and essentially I think she's blocking things off. I think she's going to try to drown them. I think that's when I read this book. That's very much the impression. It's like, oh crap, and it's freezing. So Sandry, Briar, and Daja go up to the queen, and I don't know where he's at. And she requests a private audience with the Empress, and pretty much yells at her. It's like, because of your country's traditions, I was kidnapped by one of your courtiers, and pretty much going to be locked in a box and forced into marriage. And no matter how strong I was, there was nothing going to be able to protect me, because he has magical friends. He has a magical uncle who's in charge of the, I think, wizard council. And essentially this is unethical, and I don't want to stay in your country any longer, because I cannot stand not knowing whether or not the women I interact with on a day-to-day basis have been forced into marriage against their will and put myself at risk. And so she leaves, and the Empress asks both Briar and Tris, who realize just how powerful they are, if they will stay as well. And they're like, no, we're going home. We're not interested. So they go back to their rooms and start packing. Daja comes in, I don't know whether it's the next morning. She has no idea what goes on. Sandry lets her know what's going on. It's like, you blocked me off quite a bit, and I was captured in a box because you were too busy with your new lover. So yes, again, Sandry is not happy. Daja's shocked when she finds this out. She's not particularly happy either. She goes and tries to convince her lover to leave with them, because they're not sticking. She's not going to stick around either. But of course, the woman, no, as far as she knows, she's protected. And it's like, she tells Daja that the Empress isn't going to be happy about this, because this was done within her walls. This was done within, basically, the queen, somebody under her protection, within her palace. So she's not going to be happy at all. And I think the Empress sends off to execute this guy's uncle. And she, of course, goes searching for him. I think he's left. So Sandry, Daja, and Tris go back to her, Sandry's estates. And they finish packing up. They're planning on leaving. Now, the Empress is pissed off, because Sandry's essentially told her, one of the most powerful people, ruler of the country, off, and is planning on leaving her borders, which she does not want. She wants these 4 young mages to come to heel and do as she says, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to do as she says, because she is all powerful, and they're just these young 16-year-old little mages, and they should just do as they're told in her mind. So she sends one of her powerful mages first who's known for curses. Essentially, she curses the stairway and causes Tris to become injured, and I think break a couple of bones, and puts her kind of out of commission. And her friends are like, we should wait there. She's like, no, I will follow you. Get the heck out of here. Go now. Because she's going to go to that border. because I think the queen, the Empress, goes to her royal hunting lodge. So they leave, and she's like, I will follow you when I can. So the other person that's wandering around, they find on their way there that I forgot to mention, and I mentioned in Coldfire, is the guy who thought he was insane, and he wasn't. Daja realized he was hearing on the winds. Well, they run into him, and Tris has been teaching him. And she asks him, because they're going to take him back to Winding Circle Temple. And she's like, pay attention. I've taught you a lot. They're going to need someone who, the queen, the Empress, is going to be doing all sorts of things. Listen to the wind and help them if they need it. So he agrees to go with her. He's very skittish. Again, people have thought he's insane most of his life. So he's not entirely social. He's a little crazy. So he goes with them. First thing that happens is when they're at a lodge, Persian and his people are still, basically he's pissed off because Sandry escaped. He still wants her. And he still thinks if he can force basically Sandry and her friends to stay, in particular Sandry, she'll forgive him because she'll keep that power within this country. So he has one of his mage friends. Actually, it's one of the Empress's other mages, because she's a male and female. The female is the one who cursed Tris. The male is the one who's helping Persian. And they put, basically he uses sleeping drugs on the clothing. And again, they kidnap Sandry, and they have her wrapped around with basically binding charms. So yeah, they've wrapped her up. Problem is, of course, they use thread, which of course is a problem. Briar, I think, trying to think how he wakes up. He basically, they find a way to wake up and they fight it. And Briar's used to this because there were some issues in Yangjing. At one point, and I do not have this scheduled, you go through, I'll cover battle magic, which goes back in time before this, and basically explains a lot of what happens to Briar and why he knows war tactics and why he's ticked off. But this mage is left. He hasn't left. He's still there. He uses magic to essentially put shields around both Daja and Briar, and they have to figure out how to break it. And they do. They use their own. They basically, he doesn't understand that they can mess around with magic itself. And that's what they end up doing. They end up breaking the magic shield by weaving magic itself, which is something that Sandry can do, and they all can do it. So they don't just manage plants and metals. They literally can handle magic in its purest form. So they break free. I think Briar, one of the things, as I mentioned, if you read my review or even read Street Magic, he carries these little packets of plants, of seedlings that he can throw at basically people and trigger their fast growth. And I believe this one, whether they kill him or it's just vines and wrap him up. It depends on which one he used. I can't remember which one. I don't think they kill him. I think they just wrap him up, and he basically can't use magic anymore, and he's mummified by plants. So they escape, and they have to go find Sandry. Again, they've wrapped her up. She wakes up and realizes, okay, I've been wrapped up, which things are basically to control my magic. The problem is they did it with thread. So she undoes the thread and proceeds to get up and turn basically Persian and his friends' clothing against them. And basically she ties them up in a couple of trees. And again, she's pissed off because again, she's been kidnapped for the second time. When she's trying to leave. Yeah, she gets very, very angry, as you would. And essentially she ties him up, specifically. She ties him to a rock with his clothing and any fabric of the horses. And she pretty much looks at him and says, it's like, yeah, one, I bested you. and 2, you're an idiot. It's like, and he's just cursing her to kingdom come. And she's like, yeah, they'll come find you eventually. I'm going to take your horse and leave. Like, go away. It's like, I don't want to marry you. I don't want anything to do with you. Goodbye. She gets on the horses. She contacts her friends. It's like, I'm coming. I've gotten space. She tells them what happens. They get back to the inn, and they again go on their way to a final inn before the border. And this is when the young mage, I don't know what he is. What is his name? And the cast list. Here we go. Let's see. She's giving me all of them. Where is he? I can find him. What is his name here? If I can find it here. Or to me, she lists the entire cast at the end of this book. So, but basically this young, slightly crazy person, he's listening on the winds, and he alerts them. It's like, they're raising the magic border against you. So, potentially they cannot cross. So they go, and they try, basically, the female mage is standing at the gates. It's like, you cannot leave. We've raised this against you. You have to behave and come to heal. And it's like, you'll be in a gilded cage, essentially. And Briar's like, the Yang Emperor tried to do that to me already. So they try to fight it. Then Tris has tried to sneak out. Ambrose finds her. She's basically getting herself tied to a horse. And she's like, I have to go help them. I have to get closer. And so he comes with her. She's still pretty injured, but they get close enough that she can link, and they can link their magic. And Sandry takes out the thread that she had made all those years ago when they were stuck underground. So they hold on to it, and then Tris kind of mentally grabs on. And then they use this power that she had stored in those clunks of, I think it's silk, and essentially break the barrier and pretty damage that the mage because she's connected to it. So they pretty much drain her. She has no power left at the moment. She would need to recharge, essentially, and rest. And it's like, they pretty much get their horses, they gallop up to her. And she's like, you can have anything you want. You can conquer the world. And they're like, we just want to go home. We just don't want to be captured. It's like, they pretty much cross, and they're like, our friend is going to be coming. Can we basically guarantee that she's not going to be stopped? And the one's like, I'm going to be out for like a week. I have no power left. Do whatever the heck you want. And so they leave. They go to an inn on the other side. Tris eventually joins them. Or Tris. I always, for some reason, my brain called her Tris. It's Tris. And her friends are kind of bullying her into essentially releasing her lands and saying she's going to keep calling you back. She's going to keep using her power if you have connections. So she calls in a magistrate, because Ambrose has come with Tris, and then eventually calls him in, and the magistrate kind of leaves mumbling. It's like, is she really this crazy? They're like, her friends have kind of figured out what the heck she just did. Because this woman's like, wondering, a duke? This quickly? And that's essentially what she does. She signs over all her lands and everything to her cousin. So he now has power. So basically, the Empress has no more hold on her because she no longer has lands in Norman. So he basically, her cousin who's been running this, I think he's like he may have been her mother's cousin, because he's a full-grown adult with kids. So it's like, he now has complete control. He can free women on their estates and their lands from being confined. So, in fact, there was one courtier who they talked to, because he comes to see Sandry before she left. He literally said, and it's like, why are you so nice about this? He's like, my mother had a friend who committed suicide because she was kidnapped. So and she basically made me promise that I would never even think about doing that. And so he never has. But it's like, this is the way the world is here. And Ambrose is going to go back and try to pretty much change this, because he realizes his kids aren't safe. His own daughters aren't safe. It's a ridiculous concept, and it just shouldn't be done. And that's essentially the end of it. Sandry, these kids, that's the reason the book was written, is to bring them back together. And it ends with Sandry releasing her power. And then the other thing that comes in, I think that's the very, very end, is Briar had created in his magic when he was imprisoned in Yangjing, in order to prevent from going insane, he created in his, essentially, hard to explain, essentially within his magic, an image of the roof of Discipline Cottage and the area back during that first summer. So at the end of the book, he basically almost mentally invites his 3 friends to join him, and only it's like they're all adults, and they kind of tell each other, it's like, why on earth they closed up. Briar mentioned, like, you were in a war. It's like, I killed people. I didn't want you guys to judge me. Daja talks about what happened in Coldfire. She helped a man set fire and kill people. She didn't do it, but it was her creation. Tris, it's like, I've interacted with so many mages. Once they figured out how powerful I am, they're afraid of me. And I was afraid that you would be too. And then, of course, after they all say this, Sandry's the one who's been pushing it. She's like, I killed 3 people to save my student. They were full of unmagic, but I still, without thinking, killed 3 people. And they stare at her. She's like, you thought I would be safe back at home? It's like, yeah, no. It's like they were filled with unmagic. They were crazy. And I did it to protect my student. So it's like, so we all did horrible things, and we thought basically our friends would judge us. And like, we're always worse at judging ourselves than we are. And they're like, Tris, it's like, this is just you. We know you. We don't care. And that's the reason that this specific grouping is called the Circle Reforged, particularly this book, because that's what happens. The friends have grown up, they've come back together, and their friendship is reforged. The other thing that happens is when they use all this magic in this threaded circle, it disappears and embeds itself in their hands, essentially. So they all now have these like scars in the middle of their palms, which essentially permanently links the 4 of them. So that's kind of the basis of this story. It's very much, if you want to look at political context, the author is a feminist, to say the least. All of her books are led by female power, particularly the Tortall series. You have female, two of them are about female knights. One of them is about a female wild mage. That's actually, I will cover those books. I started with the Wild Magic was actually her first book that I read, and I will cover them at some point. But I actually enjoy this book. This came out after I had started reading the book series. So, in fact, let's see, when was this published? So, I can actually find. So yeah, this was published in October 2008. So I would have been finishing up my undergrad at the time. So it's a very good book. I mean, it's obviously a heck of a lot bigger than the other ones, which I've already put away. Let's see. It ends, yeah, it's 539 pages. Because again, it's telling a kind of a big story of these guys really entering into adulthood. Because again, I made a mistake. I said they were 16 in the previous books when they're 14, which means Pasco's got to be like 11. Got to be 11 or 12. So, yeah, messed up on it's been a while since I've read these books. I'm doing a lot of this straight from memory. And yes, I can do that. My memory is actually very good, but it's been a while. So, and I don't have time to reread them because toddler. And I actually have to put up most of my paperbacks and my physical books. If you see behind me, this is mostly off limits to our toddler. Otherwise, she'd destroy them. In fact, a lot of the picture books I have are off limits because she's just about 2 years old as of this filming, which is June, or no, sorry, we're in the beginning of July here. Months are getting away from me. So, but she does not turn 2 until the end of the month. But again, she's a toddler, so I don't want my books destroyed. And I love these books. But it's also hard to read paperback books when you have a toddler grabbing at things. So, actually, I have not had a chance to reread them. And I don't have them, I don't think, in ebook form. I like the physical books. But this is a good book. I mean, it brings the friends back together. You see the complexity of their characters. You see the complexity of how this court, even though run by a woman, is run. And all because you have a female ruler doesn't necessarily mean the country's going to be in favorable of women, which is, yes, true to history. If you've studied Queen Elizabeth I, yeah, no, you don't have a lot of female empowerment during that time period, which is similar to this time period. Though, I'm trying to think, yeah, it's definitely going to be a little bit around this time, because I'm trying to think if there were knights in armor during Queen Elizabeth's time, and there probably were, but it was probably slowly aging out. But again, all because there's a female ruler doesn't necessarily mean, again, you have a lot of moving forward in feminism. Again, you can also look at her predecessor, Queen Victoria. Yeah, no, Victorian age was not known for strength in women. And no, their corsets, we're not going to go there, and no, most of those myths are not true. I may talk about that at some point. But again, back to this book. But that is really kind of one of the points the author is making. It's all because you have a strong female ruler doesn't mean the country is going to be safe for women in general. And that's a lot of what it's exploring. You also have a little bit of the fact that Daja does have a lesbian relationship, and she was kind of uneased with her friends. They're like, we don't care. We don't care at all. It's not our thing. It's like Rosethorn and Lark are in a relationship. It doesn't matter to us. You're our friend. So, and that's the other thing is they thought becoming adults meant they had to pull away from each other. And in the reality is they needed each other more than ever, particularly when they're in trouble, as Sandry found out, being kidnapped twice. So, and it doesn't matter what they've done in their past, their friends know them. And it's like, we know you would never do this maliciously. The girls know that Briar, in order to kill, Briar would have to be driven pretty far to do it. Not to mention Rosethorn was with him. Again, Battle Magic is a hard book for me to read because I'm a cat lover, and this is going to be a warning for when I cover that book. Evie's cats are killed in that book. All of them. So, that's kind of a pre-warning. I don't think they mention much of that in this book. She does go into it in Battle Magic. You get to a little bit more in Melting Stones, which is the other book, which is actually Evie's story later. And you find out just how damaged she is. And one word about Melting Stones, I'm getting away from this, is that was not meant to be a physical book. It was an audio book. I remember seeing the audiobook back when I was a library page and putting stuff away in teen section. In fact, that's how I found these when I was spending way too much time in the public library when I was in community college, avoiding going home because, yeah, home life kind of sucked. But that's neither here nor there, nor a topic for this channel. So back to the book. Enjoyable book. It's definitely a capstone to the previous 8, and something that the fans really wanted. They wanted to see these characters that they loved come back together. So this is how she does it, because this is actually published a bit later than the other books. Because I think I started reading these books and I was actually waiting for Tress's book to come out, and then this one came out later. So it took a while. But this is a fantastic book. If you enjoy this series, which I really do love, it has basically, better word, practical magics that you find in everyday objects. And that's almost the point of why the author wrote this, is because I think her mother and her sister spin, and she's always enjoyed the practical things like gardening and metalwork. And in the case of shattered glass, and I think I saw it shattered glass. That's what I called it. I think it's just shattered glass. In my head, I say shattered glass, but that happens. Basically, with the dyslexia, I have a tendency to add things. So, and that's the glass blowing and the dancing and how these practical things can actually have magic. And that's kind of the leading thread, so to speak, throughout all 9 of these books. And that was, again, the point of the author, because she admires this kind of thing, and she wanted to put a spin on it with magic. And I love these books, and that's one of the reasons I do enjoy them, because I enjoy why I do not have that, similar to the author, I do not have that skill. I would love to be able to spin or work with glass or do some of this practical stuff. I would love to be able to garden. I live in a desert. I can't garden. It's a desert. It's very, very hot. And again, with a toddler, I don't have time. My father has a green thumb. My mother has a black one. But my father's given up gardening because, again, we live in the desert, and it's hard to get things out of it. In fact, I think he was trying to actually yield fruits and vegetables rather than just doing it for enjoyment. Oddly enough, my mother-in-law and all three of my half-sisters-in-law garden. They all do the gardening, but one of them lives in Colorado, two of them live in various parts of California, and so does my mother-in-law. So they have soil and rain. You know, rain, that thing I don't see of because I live in a desert. Or at least not rarely. It's too dry. And I can't have plants in my house because cats. So, yeah, cats and plants. You cannot have both, plus toddlers. So maybe one day. We'll see if we can grow herbs or something when the kids get older. But I admire that stuff. I would love to see more of it, just like the author, which is probably one of the reasons I'm attracted to these book series. But this book puts a conclusion on it. It's a very, very good book. It definitely shows the strengths and weaknesses of these various characters and how they forgive each other and forgive themselves at the end. And that's the other core part of this book, is you can come and forgive yourselves for things you did in the past, and your friends are going to support you no matter what. So that is it for this book and the, at least for now, Tamora Pierce's Circle of Magic world, so to speak. Eventually I will cover Tortall. I own a lot of them. The only ones you will not catch me covering, if you're interested, is the Trickster's Choice books. I don't like them. I don't own them. I have no interest in them. I do not like where she went with those books. But I will cover the rest of Tortall, and I have not read her most recent book, which is covering one of the other characters. She has a tendency to go back, which is what she's doing here. She's going back in time with the main wizard in that book series of the ones that I'll cover. I'm trying to think. 16? There are 2 quartets, and then there's even a further backstory. Again, I will get to those eventually. But for now, that is all with Tamora Pierce. If you have not seen my other reviews, please check them out. I did the first 4 in September, and these guys are concluding here in November. Also, if you like this review, I do a variety of different children's book reviews most of this month. I'm also covering some fun movies as well as Native American stuff, not only children's books, but some online resources for learning about Native Americans. Did a bunch of Halloween stuff in October, doing a bunch of Christmas stuff in December, did a bunch of other stuff, including some secular homeschooling videos, some travel videos, and I have a whole bunch more planned. So like and subscribe if you like what you see. Thank you.